We came for salvation. We came for family. We came for all that's good. That's how we'll walk away.
Aloha, and welcome to the Layman's Lounge podcast, a ministry of the laymanslounge.com, where we exist to bring everyday theology to encourage Christians for everyday life. So on the other line is Seth Dillon. Seth is the CEO of the Babylon Bee, co-founder of Not the Bee, an investor in startups, and his favorite 90s song that exemplifies full-on nostalgia is?
I don't know, something Foo Fighters. The
Classic.
Pretender. There you go.
Which one?
The Pretender.
Okay, we're posting it. You went Foo Fighters. Usually people go Oasis.
Oh, that's a good one.
Pulls on all those heartstrings, man.
Wonderwall.
So, brother, having been at the helm of the Babylon Bee for a while now, what's been the most mind-blowing thing that's been like mailed to you? Like, has anyone gifted you an autographed Joe Montana football, or maybe someone sent you a bag full of their old fingernail clippings, or what kind of swag is coming in the mailbox?
We get stuff. We get love letters. We get hate mail. We get every now and then someone will send us a CD and it'll say something like, "Put this in your computer immediately." And we're like, "No, we're not putting this in our computer." First of all, who even has a CD-ROM anymore? I mean, I don't even know where I'd find one. The hate mail is the most interesting. Every now and then people take time out of their day to write us a handwritten nasty letter telling us how terrible we are and how much they hate us and how stupid we are. So those are always fun. Most of the time it's people sending us, a book that they've written that they want to get our eyes on or something like that. So, nothing too harmful, but we are a little worried every now and then when we open the mail. We're like, what is coming next? We don't know.
When you guys post, there are always comments under the post, like on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, Facebook. And most of the times they're just dad jokes, riffing off your joke, adding their 2 cents. But sometimes those comments are like diamonds in the original crown of the post. My question for you is, do you read those, and have you ever like peed your pants because someone followed up so good?
We do see that here and there. Every now and then, you won't see it happen often, but every now and then we'll interact with the comments. We do that on Facebook some, where every now and then we'll actually say something in those comment threads. But we do notice sometimes when someone says something really funny and it gets upvoted a lot. We've actually reached out to people that we've seen in comment threads or in our own headline forum that are just witty, funny people. We found people that way. We've hired writers out of those types of forums and
oh, really?
threads. So yeah, so it's a great place to find talent when people are just kind of chiming in with their take on something, or funny spin on something that we've said. It's we do pay attention. We can't pay attention to all of it. We don't read every comment. I won't say that even for a second, but we notice some of it.
I just love that I love that you're on Elon Musk's radar. It's just like every time I see that, like that guy's so bizarre, and I just love that you guys have this like internet friendship going on.
He is a fan, and it's cool because a lot of people are fans of him, and so the kind of stuff that he's doing is just so out there, literally and figuratively. And so, his huge following, it's kind of awesome that he's constantly mentioning us or commenting on our stuff, because when he comments on like an Onion article or something, his own comment on the Onion's article gets more likes and more retweets than their original post. So he draws a lot of attention to us when he does that, just because anything he says draws attention. So it's kind of fun. But there really does seem to be some alignment there where he likes us. He really thinks we're funny. And so we love to have him as a fan. I would love to meet him at some point. I think it would be cool if we could work that out. I don't know when or where that would happen, but that would be cool.
He's probably listening. Elon, answer the call, brother. Yeah. I think I even saw recently, he like put the Onion on blast, told him to be more like you guys.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And a lot of people, are following us. He gives us a bump, tens of thousands of followers every time he does that. That's kind of cool.
Get out. What, any other Any other famous or infamous folks love you guys that you know of?
Trump was retweeting us before he got banned on Twitter. He did that a couple times, and people accused him of not knowing that we're satire. But I mean,
Right.
I know people in his administration who were assuring me that he knew we're satire and was a fan of us, and that our articles got shared a lot while they were jetting around on Air Force One, and they would talk through them. So I mean, we've got some friends in high places. I know uh, one of the biggest names in government who's a huge fan of ours is Ted Cruz. I mean, Ted Cruz retweets us all the time, and you know we have a funny kind of back and forth relationship with him where we'll poke fun at him in kind of a friendly way here and there. So yeah, there's a few characters like that.
My favorite Babylon Bee post goes back to 2016, and it is this one. I can't even say it. Pentecostal teen finally receives the gift of faking tongues. I'm totally involved. I'm a YWAMer. I'm with YWAM, which is this total like charismatic thing where everyone's faking tongues. Not everyone. I don't know. I know people have the gift, but I don't. But anyways, I've even referenced
if you get the gift of faking it. That's pretty good. You know, that's the next best thing.
I've even referenced that title like a few times in some of my interviews with people and in my own conversations. So I want to ask you what post is like in the Hall of Fame for you? Like you're like, oh yeah. Like for me, it's the faking tongues gift. Which one is like, what's the one you'd get tattooed on your back?
Oh man, I mean, we have a few that have just gone like insane viral. One that comes to mind is the one where the motorcyclist identifies as a bicyclist and sets a world record. I mean, that's got like millions and millions of shares. We've done a few like that have just gone crazy viral because they were just the right message at just the right time. You know, you get that perfect nexus of it. It's a cultural, political thing, but it's also a values thing, and it's coinciding with something that's in the headlines at that particular moment. And it just kind of takes off. Some of the more, impactful ones the ones that have been more notable in our history that have drawn attention to us would be, like, for example, the piece we did on Joel Osteen, where he was handing out copies of Your Best Life Now from his yacht in the flooded streets of Houston during the flooding that followed that hurricane.
Yeah.
And that one generated some media attention. It got fact checked. But that's another one where we're criticizing his theology, and so it's one of our Christian church living theological angles, but it's also crazy viral and popular because of what was going on in the news. So every time we kind of strike that balance, that's where we really hit a sweet spot. I had one personally though where I wrote the headline, Democrats draft legislation that would make it a hate crime to eat at Chick-fil-A. And that one ended up getting fact checked. And it was the first headline that I wrote that got up on the site that was published, and it got fact checked by Snopes. So I was very proud of that one. I wanted to print that one out and maybe frame it on the wall.
Well played. So like, I'm sure as you're just getting your gas, like you and the writers, ideas come to your mind, but are you ever like, is it only that? Or is it ever like, all right, guys, let's get in there. Let's get some red balls. Let's close the door. We got to think of something about X. Like at some point, does it like, oh man, we got to get something out because this is some prime fodder?
Yeah, sometimes there are particular things where we need to hit that issue, and we know we need to hit it, and we want to find the right angle for it. And so we'll start a conversation where we'll start pitching ideas on that particular topic. We do that all the time. Normally, day to day, week to week, we're just kind of looking at what's in the headlines and just throwing ideas out there. But every now and then, yeah, we'll zero in on one particular thing and try to hammer out a headline that relates to that thing. And sometimes we'll come up with a few good ones. So we'll roll out a few articles on that one topic just from different angles.
Are you ever like, here it is, guys, this one's so good, and they're just like, no, man, they just shoot the bus down?
Yeah, when I first got involved back in 2018, when I took over, the first 100 ideas I pitched were just like dismissed. And I'm like, man, some of these are good. And Kyle was just like, you're not quite there yet. You still got to read, you got to learn more, and you got to watch more, observe. So it's a process of iteration and refinement. And you eventually, if you have the talent, you can adopt the voice, but it does take time. It takes practice. It's not like anybody can just jump in and do it. It is a difficult thing to do.
As I mentioned, I use that Babylon Bee post for real life profitable like Christian dialogue as And when I say Christian, I mean all spheres of life, because the Lord's the Lord of all, right? But
Mhm.
it's crazy because your guys' posts are satire. So, brother, what is it about satire that really is like it's like innocent as a dove and wise as a serpent, and actually truly becomes a helpful medium for the Holy Spirit to work? It's just insane. You know what I mean? Like, what is it about satire, like the workings behind the scenes? It's so it baffles me, and I feel like there needs to be a thesis written on it.
Well, there's a great G.K. Chesterton quote that we're fond of sharing when we talk about like the effectiveness of satire. He said, "Humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle."
Mm.
And I love that because what he's highlighting there is just the way that jokes, when you wrap a message in a package of humor, it's more easily received. Um, but what satire does best, I think, what we're most effective at, and it sounds negative because of the word that I use, but it's really not. I think it's actually more good. What satire does best is it ridicules bad ideas. It ridicules bad ideas. It's the most succinct way I can put it. So when there's bad ideology, bad theology, bad politics or policy, hypocritical, double standards in people's behavior, you can isolate that and mock it and draw to people's attention the absurdity and the stupidity of it, and the foolishness of it, and the harmfulness of it
Okay.
more effectively and quickly, and in more of a disarming way with humor and satire than you can in any other way. Trying to argue with someone till you're both blue in the face, that's one thing. But we've had so many times someone will come to us and they'll send us an email or something like that, and they'll say, "Hey, I didn't really get this issue until I read this piece and a link to an article that we did, and we're like, this made it like snap into place for me."
Whoa.
Satire and humor can be very effective at doing that. So I think that word ridicule has a negative sound to it. We're ridiculing things, we're mocking things. So the primary target of the ridicule, you'll notice I said it's bad ideas. It's not people. The point isn't to just make people look stupid or feel stupid. The point is to keep harmful ideas out of the hearts and minds of people, where they'll take root and then result in bad behavior. And I think satire does that very effectively. And I think that's why there's a moral justification for what we're doing here, beyond just the Christian principles and values that we have, and the ideas that we want to see proliferate. When you go out into general cultural and political stuff too, I think there's a value in that.
How do you view, like, in your own life, how do you view your own labors in running the Babylon Bee, a Christian satire outlet, in the grand scheme of things? Like, so as you engage in the divine use of animosity and ridicule, to see, like, do you see it as like kingdom work, fighting for common grace, as an apologetic, or pushing back against the effects of the fall? Like,
Well, okay, so there's a number of angles. I think it can be used as an apologetic tool. Sometimes we'll hit on things like the absurdity of atheists, talking about how God's never done anything for them while they're standing here on this earth that's rotating around the sun at so many miles per hour, while they're breathing in oxygen and their body is using that to nourish them, and their brain neurons are firing, enabling them to form abstract thought and communicate it to someone else who can listen. Like, we'll go off on all these things and illustrate just how incredible everything in creation is that's enabling the atheist to be doubtful. We'll use satire as a tool like that to expose what we think are illogical reasons for rejecting God. So yeah, it can definitely be an apologetic tool, and I love that. I love apologetics personally. So I think it's fun to be able to do it that way, because normally the way apologetics works is you formulate arguments, you do the natural theology thing, right? You try to persuade people to believe, and you lay out arguments with a syllogism, and you have premise one and premise two, and you defend it and all of that, and that's great, and it's very effective. But satire gets at it from another angle, and I think that's where personally for me, I love. I'll throw another quote at you. This one is from C.S. Lewis, where he said, "Good philosophy must exist if for no other reason, because bad philosophy needs to be answered." And I think satire is important for the same reason. Like I said, satire ridicules bad ideas. Bad ideas have to be answered, and there's a couple ways to do that. You can argue with somebody, you can try to refute their ideas, or if they're deserving a mockery, you can mercilessly mock them, and that is one way of exposing how stupid they are. And so I find I get a lot of joy out of it. It's a lot of fun. And I think it's also very effective as a means of speaking truth to culture. And when I say that, you think it's funny. People will say, "Oh, you guys do fake news. What are you talking about? Truth to culture? You guys write fake news." Well, to every joke, there's a grain of truth, right? There's a grain of truth in every joke. The reason satire is effective and the reason people laugh at it is it's funny because it's true. There is truth in it. It's remember the movie True Lies?
Yes.
And it's like a contradiction. True lies. Well, that's what satire is. It's true lies. These are made up stories that have truth in them, and can still have an impact and get people to see the point that you're trying to make, even though it's fiction. So I think it's very fun. It's very fun, but it's also very effective.
There's like this real unbiblical idea out there that I was like a slave to for so long. It was basically said like, the point of Christianity is like a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. And then the Christian life is basically sin management. Or if you want to be a good, awesome Christian, you have to engage in all manner of Christian activity like mass evangelism and preaching and missions like that. But in reality, every square inch of this world belongs to our Lord. So it's the sphere of education, media, politics, the family sphere. So how do you like not fall in, because most Christians are kind of have that idea, right? How do you sort of keep from falling into that? Like what truth do you have to remind yourself? And especially you probably have a lot of Christians, I assume, writing you and saying you should use this to just tell everyone the gospel or something like that. So how do you address this false dichotomy, this sacred secular divide, as far as your work in the Babylon Bee and even your startups?
Well, there's a lot in that question. I think, well, for one thing, we do try to preach the gospel sometimes. Sometimes we take off the satire, we go out of character. And for example, like on Good Friday, we publish a report, and the report is, "It is finished," and then we talk about how reliable sources, reliable witnesses have said blah 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 blah, and we'll report on it like it's a story. We'll actually kind of break character and report real news for a moment.
That's awesome.
We do that every now and then on for like Easter, Good Friday, instances where we can actually deal with the truth of the Christian message in a way that's kind of like funny and ironical, ironic that this fake news site is actually preaching the truth right now, without even like wrapping it in satire. So we do that from time to time, but maybe elaborate on the question, like what the challenge of what exactly, what the challenge means, the secular and the sacred divide, in what sense?
Right, because for example, if you're talking about politics or education, a lot of people will be like, let's leave that to the politicians. A lot of people are so, they're so heavenly minded, they're no worldly good. But I'm convinced that the Lord is the Lord of even just politics.
You're saying,
even if there's no mention of Jesus, like that, but politics belongs to King Jesus, right? And God uses the common grace through just common sense, for example. And so you're pushing back against common sense. So I'm just wondering, I would just assume, since you guys are Christians, you guys get like a lot of I don't know, maybe it's wrong, but I would assume a lot of grief from Christians, maybe saying like, and how do you remind so I actually believe what you're doing is.
We do sometimes. In fact, I just got an email today that was saying that we're increasing division. We are making things more divisive because we're taking a side and we're critical of, we're really hard on the left, the progressive secular left. We're constantly attacking their ideas and it's divisive, and we need to be more unifying. I don't know. In my view, the truth is divisive, is it not? I mean, the truth is going to divide people, and I'd rather be divided by the truth than united by lies. So I think that's a good principle to live by when you're just thinking about, well, what's the value of what I'm doing? Well, if you're speaking the truth and you're doing it from a place of love and not just to attack people, then I think you're in a pretty good spot, and you don't have to worry about all of that. And the criticism will come that we're too political, or we're focusing on these worldly things or whatever. But again, I go back to, we want to speak truth to culture. We do try to bring Christian truths into our messaging all the time, to push that out there. But that's not all that we do. We generally ridicule bad ideas,
Yeah.
and I think bad ideas are harmful for a number of reasons. And you can get into the spiritual aspects of it. Policies that get pushed through politics can hurt people, and if they're bad policies, they hurt people, and they produce more poverty and suffering and hardship and division and brokenness in families.
Absolutely.
And so, dealing with ideas that can lead to bad policy in politics is I think there's certainly a spiritual argument to be made for why we should be engaged in those particular battles and not sideline ourselves and say, oh, we'll leave that to somebody else to deal with.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, it's perfectly legal and fine for children to be chemically castrated without your consent as a parent.
Right.
I don't think that's a world we want to live in as Christians.
Yeah. Yeah. All truth is God's truth. So it's insane because the Babylon Bee is swimming in the seas of like pushback, be it CNN or the recent jab from the New York Times article. Can you give us an overview of the climate where it's like behind the scenes? It's not all like whoopee cushions and like armpit farts. It's like you guys have an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's a little annoying on the one hand, because we, as a satire site, and as me as the head of this site, I want to be fun and funny and lighthearted and just have a good time. And yet we have these attacks from the media, and we poke fun at them. We'll make fun of them all day long. We write a lot of articles about CNN and New York Times and whatever. But we also have to get serious every now and then and actually deal with what they're saying, because there are very serious implications and potential ramifications from what they're saying about us. When they lie about us and they say that we're pretending to be a satire site so that we can get around Facebook's rules and all that nonsense, they're actually putting our business in jeopardy, and it has to be dealt with. So it is a little frustrating. We incur a lot of legal costs because we're having to consult with attorneys, talk about our options. Should we sue them for defamation, stuff like that. So, I mean, that's currently where we're at with the whole New York Times thing. Actually, they published a story in which they said that we traffic in misinformation under the guise of satire. They said that as a fact. And then they linked to a source that didn't support that claim.
Right.
There is nothing that can support that claim. And the truth of the matter is, this is a very interesting thing, they're trafficking in misinformation under the guise of journalism. Yeah. They are the ones doing that which they accuse us of doing. So there's great irony in that. And I think exposing that is important. But the reason that they're doing that is because satire is very effective. They don't like the targets that we're aiming at. They want to silence us. So they come after us. And the best way to come after us, because we're a satire operation, which is, you could call it fake news. We jokingly call ourselves fake news you can trust. So they see that as an easy way of discrediting us by saying, you know what, these guys are actually fake news. They're trying to mislead people. So they see that as a shortcut to discrediting us and getting rid of us, and then not having to worry about us anymore. So we have to take that pretty seriously and fight back against it. So right now we're just kind of figuring out what our options are and what the best course of action is, for us as a business.
So if you guys lose, how do we all lose? Like where is your fight right now with like the New York Times, also my fight, and anyone who wants to have a voice and like?
Well, that's a good question. I think that if they can successfully get the lie to stick that we're faking the satire thing to try to mislead people on purpose and be deceptive, then that doesn't bode well for other Christians and conservatives who are trying to stay on these platforms. You can't. What it means is that reality, the truth, and your motives don't matter. It doesn't matter. So the really important thing is that they not be allowed to smear us on the basis of what they wish our motives were. We wake up every day and we're trying to make jokes, make people laugh, and speak a little truth to culture. That's all we're trying to do. They think we wake up, or they claim that we wake up every day thinking, how can we mislead millions of people today and get them to believe something false that will be harmful to the nation? And that's just, it's pretty egregious. But I think it is a battle for everybody. This whole, right now, free speech is like the big thing. Free speech is a really big thing. Tech tyranny is a really big thing. It really can't be overstated how important it is that people realize how big of an issue this is, and how they're really they're on this thin line where they're getting really close to crossing a line where they're basically just silencing anyone who dissents from their viewpoints. And so I think people who are on the front lines of that battle, and I would consider us one of, we're not in a constant battle. We're not in courtrooms yet. We're not like dealing with it the way that Project Veritas and PragerU and Live Action and some of these other conservative organizations are dealing with the legal fight. But we're close to that. We're right up there with them. And I think it's important that the Christian and conservative voices be very bold in fighting back against that.
Yeah. I was pleased one day, just sort of shifting gears, I think it was like in August of last year or something, when something new ended up on my feed called Not the Bee. Yes. And so Not the Bee is your guys' humor-based, this is the line I love, is your humor-based entertainment site that covers news so absurd it should be satire, but somehow it isn't. So man, this one's, it's actually super funny, but I was realizing it is totally depressing. Like some of those ones are really depressing, but some of them are like, I mean, they're all funny, but like, how do you not just get bummed?
That is the challenge. And I think, our readers give us this feedback too. They're like, it's just the nature of the news cycle. The world is crazy. I'll throw another G.K. Chesterton quote at you. He said in 1911, the world is too absurd to be satirized. The world has become too absurd to be satirized. He said that in 1911. It's been more than 100 years since then. The world has gotten way crazy. Like back then, biological men weren't allowed to compete in sports against women. Math wasn't racist. The world hadn't gone as crazy as it currently is now back in 1911. But he was saying that back then. I mean, now look at how it is. So when you actually cover what's really happening and you do it from the perspective that we're doing with Not the Bee, yeah, it can be kind of a downer. It's like, this is just one thing after another. It's like, where are things going from, how can it get any worse? But that is just where we're at right now. It's an accurate gauge on where we're at right now. And I think we're trying to cover that stuff in a lighthearted enough way. We're using a lot of mockery. We are injecting humor and sarcasm and irony into it. So we're trying to have fun with it, but it's definitely the backup plan for the Bee, because when the world genuinely does become too absurd to be satirized, we can always just report the news on Not the Bee.
Oh my gosh. That's so good and sad. So Not the Bee, notthebee.com, right, where we go. But yeah, you guys have some proper merch. Have you seen in public yet someone rocking the Karl Marx with the clown nose shirt? And if you haven't, when you do, would you buy that guy a beer, give him a high five, or just say a little prayer, keep walking?
I'd love to buy him a beer if I had the time. I have seen Babylon Bee merch out in the wild a couple of times. Little bee stickers on people's cars and stuff like that. I've snapped some pictures of those. I've seen someone wearing a bee hoodie. Yes. Not the Bee, not yet. We haven't sold enough of that merch yet for it to be really out there enough. But I love that stuff. We're gonna get more of that in there. We're trying to prioritize making some more of those funny tees and stuff like that. So you'll start to see more and more of it.
We'll be linking those in the show notes. And so just by the way, it's notthebee.com. And under the merch, you could find that Karl Marx shirt with a clown, just a red clown nose, and doesn't even say. And then
Karl the clown, it doesn't say anything.
And then on Twitter is @not_the_bee. So Not the Bee with underscores. And then of course the Babylon Bee is the babylonbee.com and @the Babylon Bee. Hey man, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
It was great to be on. Thank you. Good questions. Good discussion.
We came for salvation. We came for family. We came for all that's good. That's how we'll walk away. We came to break the bad. We came to cheer the sad.